Give me your thoughts on Obama's proposed defense cuts and how dangerous it is to the sovereignty of the United States of America and
Well,
its allies.
the thing is, it's not about the cuts, it's about his vision for national security strategy, which is really reflective of a level of incompetence that is unconscionable. Because when you look at the world that we're in right now, and I would ask the people go and look at the Wall Street Journal article that was just released this morning talking about that drawdown. His strategy does not reflect ground truth of the world in which we're living in. We don't have a peace dividend. The world is a much more dangerous place, definitely over the last a year to a year and a half. So I think that what we have to do in order to develop the right type of strategy, you have to sit down and you have to look at the geographic areas of responsibility, the SOUTHCOMs, the PACOMs, CENTCOMs, EUCOMs. And you have to do a threat assessment, a real serious threat assessment that looks at, the next 15 to 20 years. And then you develop the requirements, the capabilities, and the capacities that are going to be necessary to contend with those threats. You have to move away from a forward deployed type of military force to a power projection type of platform that will enable you to be able to engage, to deter, and to strike in those respective areas of responsibilities. And we have to move away from nation building and occupation style warfare. But for us to have a commander-in-chief that stands up and says, we're just going to have a strategy that says we can only fight in one place at one time, that completely disregards the fact and the premise that the enemy has a vote. And that's a scary premise to operate under.
What kind of message does that signal our enemies would be, terrorist-sponsored states like Iran or even terrorists themselves?
You already see it happening right now. I mean, there is a sense of weakness out there that we are conveying, and there is a window of opportunity that people like Iran are seeing. Look, a year ago from now, we were all euphoric about the rise of democracy in the Middle East, and we had this Arab Spring, and now we're starting to realize that it is more of an Arab winter. When you consider the fact that in this month, the Muslim Brotherhood and radical Islamic groups will have a 65% control of the Egyptian government. That's going in the wrong direction. All across, the Maghreb, Morocco, Tunisia, all the way into the Levant and the Middle East, you see very alarming situations. There's a fight for regional hegemonic dominance, and Iran is posturing itself to be that new hegemon. And you see them flexing their muscles. We can't say that these are just empty rhetorical threats that Iran is making. You have to take them to be credible, because you're not dealing with a rational group of leaders there. You're dealing with theocrats. You're dealing with an incredible despot and dictator, and that's what you see in many different places of the world. And as a matter of fact, when we sit down and recognize that Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is going to be doing a Latin American tour here over the next week, going through Venezuela, visiting Cuba, up into Central America, that should cause us a lot of concern.
Speaking of that leads into my next question. You say there's a potential for a modern-day Cuban Missile Crisis to
Yes.
occur with Iran. Can you explain your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are starting to get reports that there are, potential medium and long-range missile sites being constructed in Venezuela in conjunction with Iran that could definitely threaten us here in South Florida. And we have to recognize the fact that a nuclear device is a means by which you can hold a certain region or the rest of the world hostage. One of the great lessons that comes out of what occurred in Libya is this. Back in 2003, 2004, Mr. Gaddafi openly declared and turned in his own nuclear weapons program. If he had still had that threat, or the potential to have that threat, I don't think you would have seen NATO go in the manner that they did to oust him from power and, of course, bring about his eventual demise. So the lesson for people is that if you have that device, that becomes a bargaining chip. When you hear people talk about the relationship that we must have with Pakistan, everyone talks about how tenuous and cautious you have to be because Pakistan has nuclear devices. So we have to realize that there is a collusion of countries that is occurring. George Bush called it an axis of evil. But there are things that are developing that we have to be very careful and we have to pay attention to, because Cuba is not that far away from us.
So Bush's axis of evil still exists?
Of course it does. I mean, I'm very concerned with the fact that you have a 28-year-old four-star general that's now in charge in North Korea. And who knows which way it's going to go, because as a new, young, untried leader, you have to do something to prove that you can continue on and gain the respect of the military, which is the dominant entity and political system in North Korea. And when you combine that with the fact that you have a China that holds 28% of our debt, and their economic advantages that they have is not going to improve the standard of living of a Chinese citizen. They're developing a strategic Navy and a strategic Air Force. And they're going to continue to back North Korea. So those are the things that we have to be concerned about when we sit down and we lay out this world geographically. Look what happened on Christmas Day in Africa, in Nigeria, where you had the radical Islamic group there attacked Christians at a Catholic church. And they said that they want to see Sharia law instilled in Nigeria. And Nigeria also happens to be a very prominent oil producing energy resource country. So we have to start looking at these threats.